Well, just a few hours ago, President Trump posted this on Truth Social, April 2nd, Liberation Day in America, reminding us all that this is coming. So people have been trying to, go through the tea leaves here on exactly what's coming on April 2nd. What does Liberation Day for the United States look like? It's not going to be just some small announcement. I'm going to go through what sources have been telling us here at Redacted as it relates to the IRS. We'll talk about that here on the show in a second. But here's what Trump said in his own words. April 2nd is Liberation Day for America because we will start taking back some of the vast wealth that has been taken from us due to the many weak, incompetent, perhaps even dishonest politicians who have represented us in the past. So what exactly is coming? And we know tariffs for one thing, right? This is a big piece of it.
But we're talking about politicians. So what the major questions are those American politicians? Because we know that they profit off of investments that they make, and that still is allowed, that Congress is allowed to make investments. Is it people who maybe have dual citizenships, people who have been representing other countries' interests? If we could just look at, can we put that explanation back? Perhaps even dishonest politicians. It's like maybe we'll get around to that. Those perhaps even like it's obviously an unclear statement. So we could read the tea leaves until the cows come home. I think the biggest the cows come home. I think the biggest thing is going to be I think the biggest piece of all of this we've heard from President Trump is tariffs, right? 25% tariffs, going to war with China economically. What will this look like for American aluminum, American steel, back at home, American manufacturing? That's the biggest piece of it. Here's President Trump in his own words talking about this more deeply. Watch.
Is there going to be a summit in June?
It could be. I mean, I wouldn't mind a summit, but there's going to be something else taking place. It's called April 2nd, and that's going to be tariffs. And China will pay and other countries will pay. We've been ripped off by every country in the world, friend and foe. And on April 2nd, I call it the liberation of America. We've been the fat, dumb, foolish country that allowed everybody to rip us off, including our friends. Look at NATO. Until I got involved in NATO, we were paying for the whole thing practically.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that could mean, and the timing of it is suspicious because it's just days before April 15th, which is a tax filing day. Many people have already filed their taxes, so that's not going to impact that tax filing day, obviously, or else we're going to give refunds to people who've already done it.
So this is, to me, it's going forward. So this is the IRS. I think there's bubbling rumors right now, and I've heard from sources who specifically told us here at Redacted that something big is about to happen with the IRS. Are we about to see a closure of the IRS? Now, I don't know if it's fully going to be closed or if a large, massive pieces of it are going to be closed on April 2nd. That this will put the power back in the people, instead of taking tax dollars out of our pockets. This could be an entire shift of people under $150,000 a year who are making $150,000 a year not paying any taxes. Mm-hmm. There's also word, of course, that these Doge checks that President Trump wants to send out of like $5,200 of Doge money that was taken from the American people would go back to the American people. But also, as we talked about here on the show, the external revenue service, right, which is another big piece of this, which we're likely to also be announced. Now, that comes from Howard Lutnick, specifically in the Trump administration, that we'll hear an announcement about the external revenue service. Hard to say it. I'm so used to saying internal.
Yeah.
What would that be, though? The external revenue service?
Well, the idea of that is that goods and services sold are taxed at the sale and the exchange between countries. So if we're buying something from Mexico, say corn or what have you, then that tax is paid then. So the way it works now, obviously, you know this, you pay taxes on the dollars you earn, then you pay taxes when you buy that corn because there's a tax on top of that, and it's depending on which state you're in. And so we are doubly taxed. This is something he's talked about extensively. So it would be interesting to see. And then the people with Trump derangement syndrome that just hate everything he says, are they really going to defend this system, especially when they're trying so hard right now, Democrats, to frame themselves as the party of the working class, which is a lull. That's laughable, right? They've done nothing for the working class except patronize to them and make their life worse and more dangerous. And so how is this going to work? Is this something we can unite around? Is fiscal responsibility, that's That's a joke too.
Right.
That's a funny. Well, that's a joke.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says, talked about April 2nd as well and what's coming. Watch.
On April 2nd, we're going to produce a list of other countries' tariffs, and we are going to go to them and say, look, here's where we think the tariff levels are, non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, unfair funding, labor suppression, and if you will stop this, we will not put up the tariff wall. If you do, then we will put up the tariff wall to protect our economy, protect our workers, and protect our industries.
Right. So get your guesses in. What does this mean? Is this something that will actually serve the American people? Redacted is brought to you by American Financing, which is a great way to dig yourself out of debt. If you have had a hard time in the last 4 or 5 years, who hasn't? It's not your fault. Interest rates are up, expenses are up, inflation hit us all hard. So if you're still carrying credit card balances with more than 20% interest rates, that's doo-doo. You need to get rid of that. You can ignore the one thing around you that you might have some equity in, which is your home. You shouldn't do that. That's where American Financing can help you. They can teach you to leverage that asset in order to dig yourself out of debt and build wealth instead of continuing to dig deeper and deeper. If you give them 10 minutes, they can give you a shot of saving $800 every single month. And that's exactly what they've been doing for their average customer. It's a simple, no obligation call that can change everything. They have a team of salary-based mortgage consultants. So there's an incentive. There isn't any incentive to put you in a loan that doesn't make sense. It's just, again, something wealthy people do is a mindset of like, oh, let me see. Does this work for me? I'm going to check it out and see if I can learn this. And they're not afraid to learn new financial tools and put them into place. But we're not taught that in American education. So you have to learn it yourself. You have to seek it out yourself. So call American Financing at 866-890-8434 or head on over to americanfinancing.net/redacted. One more time, it's americanfinancing.net/redacted, or give them a call at 866-890-8434. Well, here's something that didn't serve the American people is bombing Yemen. Why did we have to do this? Why did we do this? Well, Jeffrey Goldberg over at The Atlantic says that he was let in on a group chat that was planning the bombing of Yemen just last week. He was accidentally added to a signal group and he thought, that's kind of weird, but he lurked instead and kind of watched what was happening. He says the person who did this was Tim Walz from the Walz, say his name. I can't find it here. I will find it for you. From the Trump administration. And he watched as Trump senior officials, cabinet members, continued to debate whether they should do this, how they would do it, and when they should do it. And it shows us that there is, in fact, dissent inside the Trump administration. Now, Michael Waltz. It's a strange story. And taken at face value, it would indeed tell us, okay, well, some inside the Trump administration did want to bomb Yemen for this shipping route that the Houthis had blocked in the wake of October 7th. And some did not, particularly the J.D. Vance camp. It said, I don't think we really need to do this. There's a lot of nuggets in here, but it's also would be illegal because one, Walz himself had set messages to disappear, which is against the law. Two, it could be a setup for various reasons, such as do the part in here, and you should read for yourself. Do we have screens of it? Shall we put it up?
Yeah. Here's the. Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is from The Atlantic, where he writes. Jeffrey Goldberg says the world found out shortly before 2 p.m. Eastern time on March 15th that the United States was bombing Houthi targets across Yemen. I, however, knew 2 hours before the first bombs exploded that the attack might be coming. The reason I knew this is that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, had texted me the war plan at 11:44 a.m. The plan included precise information about weapons, packages, targets, and timing. This is going to require some explaining. So it's interesting that he says Pete Hegseth sent it to him because we know Mike Waltz, who's a neocon, who, if anyone should be fired, I'm hoping it's Mike Waltz because he is the one who's been really kind of driving us towards war with Iran. He is the one who wants war with Iran. So he is a neocon inside the Trump administration. I would love for Mike Waltz to be the one that gets fired here. But anyway, why is he saying, Pete Hegseth texted him the war plans from the Signal group?
Well, he was lurking in the Signal group and he saw these texts, such as this from J.D. Vance, who had previously said, I'm not sure we should do this. I'm not sure POTUS understands the implication. But if you think we should do it, just do it. But then we're going to have to bail Europe out again. And let's make sure our message is tight here. To which Pete Hegseth says, yes, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic, but we're the only ones who can do this. To which later another administration official says POTUS wants to do it. It's a green light. So we're going to do it. And then some planning of it. Now, what's kind of weird is that this planning that goes on, battleship type bomb X5 right now at this time with these bombs. Why would that happen in a Signal chat when none of the recipients on this chat have access to that? Why would they have to know that? You would think that you'd need to tell the bombers, but do you need to loop in Marco Rubio on the exact military strategy? Right? I'm not using the right words, but you understand what I'm saying.
Right. Well, also, and we heard from John Kiriakou, who was a former CIA agent, and said that this leak is a violation of the Espionage Act. At least according to the judge in my case, Judge Leonard Brinkmia, a Clinton appointee, said that providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it is worthy of 10 years in prison. Accidental or no accident, it's beyond time to rewrite the outdated and politicized 1917 Espionage Act. So that's pretty crazy,
right?
Again, why was this included? Why are they using Signal to communicate?
Right. Signal, the reporter points out clearly, is not an ordained messaging platform. It's not used inside of any kind of war room. It's not. It's not archived. So why would they be doing that? And then not be careful with who's on the group chat. Now, all of us have copied in the wrong person on group chats. I mean, raise your hand if you haven't, right? But this feels very purposeful. And Brian Hughes, a spokesperson for the National Security Council, has said that it appears to be an authentic message chain, and they are reviewing how that happened. But again, the fact that it's not an ordained communication platform, that Walz had set some of his messages to disappear after 1 week or 4 weeks, raises questions about whether you're violating the federal records laws. And again, is there a message here that they want other countries to hear, such as the European Union? And I mean, I don't know. Have we not been clear about our sort of disdain for the freeloading of European nations?
Yes.
Did we need to leak this in another way? What would be the advantage of doing it this way?
The only thing I can think of is if they're trying to torpedo one of these people. So are they trying to torpedo Hegseth? Are they trying to torpedo Mike Waltz?
Right.
But again, Mike Waltz apparently is the one that added Jeffrey Goldberg to the chat from The Atlantic. So it'd be great if Mike Waltz is the one that actually gets pushed out. But, again,
like someone would have done that from his phone and then he gets in trouble. Like, I don't know how that happened.
I don't know. It's hard to say. But again, it seems like all of the strategy right now is pushing this towards Hegseth. Like they're trying to get Hegseth fired.
You think?
I clearly it seems that way. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It just seems crazy to me that the journalist would like hang out in there. Like if I accidentally got added to a group chat and I realized it was like the vice president, the secretary of defense, I'm like, I'm out of here before I see anything at all.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey Goldberg is really a sleazy guy. So, like, let's be honest here, okay?
Oh, what I would do is I would say, this is Natali Morris from Redacted. Am I supposed to be here? And I would screenshot that and I would save it because I would not want to be framed for anything.
Yeah.
And I would make damn sure that everybody acknowledged my presence. There's no way I would lurk in a group like that.
I know you guys are sharing some war strategy here. Just want to let you know this is Clayton from Redacted. You guys added me to this group chat. Like I see that you're planning this war in Yemen and making these bombing runs. Am I supposed to be?
Sure you want me here?
Sure you want me to be?
I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Telegram and those channels, but what they do is it'll actually show that you've read the message. Like it shows who's seen it, so they would know that you're seeing that information.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know how this happened, but apparently there are 18 other people on this whole chat. So
now another piece of this is, again, the part that J.D. Vance is pushing back. He doesn't seem to want to escalate war in the Middle East. And he and his spokespeople had to say, well, we're on board with whatever POTUS wants. If POTUS greenlit this, we are the company guy. We're all good with it. So even though the chat does seem to indicate that there's hesitation about escalating, and that is what we would know, that's what we've seemed to be reading from other sources, is that the vice president and the president absolutely do not want to escalate in the Middle East. And that seems to be what Steve Witkoff, their Middle East envoy, is saying as well. So are they setting up who is for and who is against it? Because that also makes this quite clear.
Yeah, they're trying to call people out publicly about this, like going to war with Iran. Like here's who's on board and who's not. And we know that Mike Waltz is fully on board with this. So get these neocons out of there. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the worst in terms of looping in the wrong person.
Yeah.
Last week, I accidentally texted in Portuguese from my watch to Clayton's mom. That's not the same.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling better about that mistake.
Sting Fury says, "Hey, you guys are promoting lies." No, this has been widely reported. In fact, the White House confirmed this. So this is now confirmed by the White House that yes, these text messages did leak out, and it was first reported in the Atlantic, which I wouldn't normally trust the Atlantic at all, but the White House did confirm it. So yeah.
We're reporting the reporting and trying to parse out why.
Yeah.
So we've not reported any lie. So Kiss My Butt show is brought to you by Hillsdale College, because if you have a passion for learning, which clearly you do, nobody comes to Redacted who doesn't have a passion for learning. Every single one of you watching us right now, you guys know something. You come here with an educated opinion, and I love that. And if you want to continue the learning process, then Hillsdale College is a great place for you, because they offer more than 40 free online courses. That's right, totally free. You can learn about the works of C.S. Lewis, stories in the book of Genesis, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution, which is something we're going to talk about in the news right now, right here, right now. The rise and fall of the Roman Republic, the history of the ancient Christian church. All of this is offered within Hillsdale's free online course. You may really enjoy, at this juncture in modern history, Introduction to Western Philosophy. It's a 14-lecture online course where you explore the works of the most important philosophers of the West. So all of these courses are self-paced. You can start whenever you want. And again, I say it's free. So go to hillsdale.edu/redacted to enroll. There's no cost. Easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/redacted and enroll for free. One more time, hillsdale.edu/redacted.
Here's a story that should make everyone think twice before spitting into a tube and mailing it off to a giant tech company. Genetic testing company 23andMe has just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy this morning, and its CEO, Anne Wojcicki, I never say her last name, Wojcicki? Anne Wojcicki, yes, the sister of the former YouTube CEO, Susan Wojcicki. So, man, these sisters, powerful tech players, right?
Boss ladies.
An ex-wife of Google founder Sergey Brin, by the way, who loves data, loves having those big CIA contracts as well, has stepped down. Now, the company enters a court-supervised sale of its assets. So now the big question, what the hell happens to the genetic data of millions of Americans, and what happens if it winds up in the hands of a foreign adversary? Like, what if a Chinese company buys all the data without your consent at all? They own it as an asset, right? So it just gets sent. This is your DNA we're talking about here. One of the most personal, sensitive pieces of data imaginable, and now it might end up on the auction block. Remember, 23andMe already had a massive data breach back in 2023. We covered it here at the time, and it exposed info from nearly 7 million people, including family trees, health predispositions, and more. The hacker at the time didn't even have to break in. All they did was use old login credentials, just logged in, and then 23andMe's system gave them access to connected family data without any additional verification at all. Edward Snowden at the time said companies that collect your genetic data are building permanent records about you and your children that can be sold, stolen, or seized. And so let's talk about this. regulating this, right? Because there was a bunch of Democrats who are trying to push, Chuck Schumer included, trying to push to regulate this. But as Snowden points out, regulating it is one thing, and it only works if the data is never leaked or stolen. Watch.
The problem isn't data protection. The problem is data collection. Regulating the protection of data presumes that the collection of data in the first place was proper, that it was appropriate, that it doesn't represent a threat or a danger, that it's okay to spy on everybody all the time, whether they're your customers or whether they're your citizens, so long as it never leaks, so long as only you are in control of what it is that you've sort of stolen from everybody.
Yeah. California Attorney General sent this message out, basically saying people who are using 23andMe need to delete their data as soon as possible. Like, you can log in, and under California's law, you can log in and delete your own stuff immediately if you want to, apparently. I mean, hopefully they're not holding it somewhere else, but you can log in and go through the deletion process. And
well, Edward Snowden talks about that in his book, that you never really delete something.
Right.
Even if you delete something from your own computer, it still exists in some phantom form in another part of the computer. So do not rely on deleting things ever.
I guess the idea is that maybe it wouldn't be sold off, but that's the problem. It's like, how is this going to be used? And could it be used in warfare? So I'm not a fan of this guy in general, Colorado Democratic Congressman Jason Crow. He's a big fan of illegal immigration in the United States, but he has been warning about this. It's interesting why Democrats, they're very pro privacy when it comes to this kind of stuff, but they're very pro censorship. I can't wrap my head around it, like these weird contradictions here. But here is Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, warning us all about what happens if this data leaks. Watch.
Yeah, so to be clear, I think one of the things we're talking about here is that there are now weapons under development and developed that are designed to target specific people. Right, that's what this is, where you can actually take someone's DNA, take their medical profile, and you can target a biological weapon that will kill that person or take them off the battlefield or make them inoperable. So you can't have a discussion about this without talking about privacy and commercial data and the protection of commercial data, because expectations of privacy have degraded over the last 20 years. Young folks actually have very little expectation of privacy. That's what the polling and the data show. And people will very rapidly spit into a cup and send it into 23andMe and get really interesting data about their background. And guess what? Their DNA is now owned by a private company and can be sold off with very little intellectual property protection or privacy protection. And we don't have legal and regulatory regimes to deal with that. So we have to have an open and public discussion, and this is going to have to be a political discussion about what does the protection of healthcare information, DNA information, and your data look like, because that data is actually going to be procured and collected by our adversaries for the development of these systems. Wow. So how will they use it in warfare? Mm-hmm. You can only imagine how they would use it in warfare, targeting individuals in certain areas, with biometric data that they have stored in a database that they can then use, using drone programs to launch and go after these individuals.
That's dystopic.
It's already happening.